here. There we are. Hello. Hi, friends. Good Monday. Of course it's Monday. Of course it's Monday. Hi. Welcome to our second Two Towers discussion. We're doing chapters 3 and 4 today. And you're never gonna believe this, but I think they might be some of my favorite chapters. So you've come on this little expedition as well. Hi, Andrew. Hi, Pedro. We have quite the story to discuss today, don't we? Hold on. Hi, Ark. Hello. Hello. Let me, while you all are rolling in, let me, get this link here for you. Favorites? No, really? Me? Again? There's I scheduled the lives for next week. We're going to do Monday, same time, chapters 5 and 6. So if you want to put your notifications on for that, go right on ahead. But don't leave. We're going to go ahead and get started. I want to start by looking at some of the things you guys have said before we go and do our recap of it all. Because I feel sometimes like we don't get to dive into it as much. And I love y'all's feedback and thoughts. So, and I apologize if I butcher your names. Sheedler. Okay, we talked about this a little bit last week because Sheedler was saying that it's interesting that the movie goes back and forth between Frodo and Sam and the members of Rohan and Fanghorn. But in the book, the story focuses entirely on the latter until book 4. And I think a little bit of that is due to the different abilities in telling a story in writing and telling a story in a moving picture. Because even the story of even what we read today, and what we read today is all from Merry and Pip's perspective, right? And their experience with the Uruk-hai, the orcs, and then meeting Treebeard. In the movie, we do see two different Toodles. Hello. We see the two different, we go back and forth between Frodo and Merry and Pip, and even Aragorn. But in the book, we're very we narrow it down. One thing the films did that you don't like is the artwork is less imaginative. Look at posters and book covers from the 70s. Oh. You think that in the films the artwork is less imaginative? Expand on that, Pedro. Go ahead. Okay. And then Andrew dropped some behind the scenes on Treebeard, which I'm interested in reading before we dive in. So, okay. We had mention of tree men at the pub in the Green Dragon, which I did remember. I remembered we had heard of trees walking about in a very nonchalant way, and I do wonder if some of those are the Entwives that are closer to the Shire. But we'll get to that when we go through when we go through the 2 chapters kind of beat by beat. The very earliest mention of Treebeard in the drafts was when Gandalf was talking to Bingo Frodo at Rivendell, explaining why he was delayed in returning to Hobbiton. Ooh, interesting. And that's not in our reading. I don't think, at least. Maybe it is. I was caught, maybe, oh no, it might be. I was caught in Fangorn and spent many weary days as a prisoner of the giant Treebeard. Actually, let's save Treebeard for when we get in there. That's actually really good. Okay. All right, let's dig in. That first comment, I wanted to get to that one at least. So we read chapters 3 and 4. Next week is chapters 5 and 6. But what we made through today, so we are in Two Towers, the third book within the Two Towers. We read the Uric High, chapter 3, and Treebeard, chapter 4. So let's start with Uric High. Barble equals Treebeard. Treebeard. So I like this. We started the book with Aragon, right? Yeah. I'm trying to even think. Yeah. So the first two chapters are Aragon's perspective, and this third and fourth chapters are Pippin's, technically. They went to tree, like with the Ents in the movie. I like the books version. I kind of imagine Treebeard as a cross between a tree and the Jolly Green Giant. Oh, interesting. Because I'm obviously biased, but I liked the movie version, so that's what I saw when I was reading. It was interesting, though, when we did get to the description of him and saying he was troll-like. But I do think they would be. I do think they would, Highbean. I do think that they would be very tree-like. Because they look like they blend in with the trees. I don't know. So yeah, Juice, hello. Yeah, I think they would. I think they would be really tree-like. But you know, everyone sees things differently in their heads. And again, I'm biased because I watched the movies first, right? Tis the way. Okay, so we open up in the beginning of Uric from the perspective of Pippin, and I thought it was interesting that I wasn't necessarily expecting us to go so far back in Pip's POV, and I don't even know if I necessarily liked that. I think this is an interesting experience where it is being broken out, and like we're getting like the first two chapters spanned like a couple of days with Aragon, and then we pretty much went all the way back. Treebeard equals Barble in Spanish. Oh, I see what you're saying, Mark. But we go all the way back, and so it's almost like it almost raised my anxiety trying to read so far back. It's like it was nice to learn how Pip had like set the leaf aside and what he did, how he did that and whatnot. But I think when I first realized that we weren't going to be like, I kind of expected it to pick up with us having already been like gotten out of the orcs' grasps. It makes sense that that's not how it happened, how it was written, but it made me very anxious because I was like, I don't want to go back in time because I feel like I'm losing time. I feel like I need to know where everyone is, and I need to know that everyone's safe, and I need answers. And then it's like, well, that's why we have. Actually, we don't. It's funny because I didn't realize that this book starts as page 511, so it's like the entire book itself is like goes up to page 924, but it's not. This is not 924 pages. Because we start at page 511. That's neither here nor there. But did you guys have any feelings about that? Because I was a little, I had to take like a deep breath. I found myself wanting to read it really quickly to get to the part that I wanted to get to, which was essentially getting to the part of how they escaped. Like the actual escape. But everything was important leading up to it, so I understand it. Good evening, Kelly. Pedro read it first, and the movies are great, but I think all the images are as fantastical as some of you saw before the movies. The Tolkien calendar, for example. Oh, I've never seen any of these. Are you in the Discord? You want to drop them in there? Okay, so we open up. Pip wakes up and we get this. There is some good, like, kind of heinous and scary imagery within describing the orcs, which is worth taking a moment to kind of be terrified by. 'Tis the season. Tomorrow is Halloween. And I think it's I think chapter 3 was such an anxiety inducing, like I wanted to read it so fast because I knew Merry and Pip were gonna be safe. Maybe that's it. I know I'm stumbling over my words a little bit, but it's like, maybe it's the fact that I know Merry and Pip are safe, but I have to endure some of the horrors that they went through, or like these moments of, it's almost like, why tease the fact that they might not be safe? Well, I guess we don't know that they're not safe. I guess if you're reading it, you don't know yet that they actually escape. That's where the movie experience gets you. The interaction between the orcs is important, yes. And it is very different to the movie. That's true. Because I think something that stuck out to me the most was that there's multiple different orc families all together right now. So yeah, let's go through it. Let's dive into it, because you are right. It is very important, Kelly. It is very important. So we wake up, Pip. Okay. We wake up with Pip. He is hungry. He realizes he is on the back of an orc. And he says that hundreds of hideous orc faces grinned at him out of the shadow. And he's looking for Mary, and he sees that Mary is nearby. Or maybe he's not. Oh, yeah. But the way this opens, Pippin lay in a dark and troubled dream. It seemed that he couldn't hear his own small voice echoing in black tunnels, calling Frodo, Frodo. But instead of Frodo, hundreds of hideous orc faces grinned at him out of the shadows. Hundreds of hideous arms grasped at him from every side. Where was Mary? I think that's the perfect entry to, like, hi Kendra, to set the scene of Pip is not fully aware right now. He's very much in this like limbo state of awareness and like sleep, or maybe being passed out for a lot of different reasons. And I think this like waking up with Pip and him being in this like troubled dream that's not really a dream, but is very like hard to tell where the reality is for Pip, sets the scene very well. Frodo, hundreds of hideous orcs. What's the difference? Only, only a lot. So he realizes that his dream is way worse than he could have imagined. And also, of course, that they're tied up, they're bound. But we do get, so Pippin is trying to piece together how him and Mary got into this situation, right? And he recounts how they had run off without Strider. They'd run off alone, and when they realized that Frodo was missing in the forest. And Mary and Pip had been running, and they hadn't realized that there was a group of orcs until they basically ran right into them. They yelled, and then that's when we find out, actually, this is great. Then Boromir had come leaping through the trees. He had made them fight. He slew many of them, and the rest fled. But they had not gone far on the way back when they were attacked again by 100 orcs at least, some of them very large, and they shot a rain of arrows, always at Boromir. Boromir had blown his great horn till the woods rang. And at first the orcs had been dismayed and had drawn back, but when no answer but the echoes came, they had attacked more fiercely than ever. Pippin did not remember much more. His last memory was of Boromir leaning against a tree, plucking out an arrow. Then darkness fell suddenly. taking no notice of old Strider. Yep, they just ran on without him. Wild. Hello, also. Summer loyal, yeah, yes, yep. We'll get to the summer loyal to Sauron and summer loyal to Saruman, which I think that conversation and that moment and that the battle between the orcs is incredibly important. Not just because that's the moment that Pip is able to kind of get off his binds, but for it's a great example of a time Tolkien uses to explain how big the threat is. Pip is remembering that Boromir had been slain with a bunch of arrows, that he'd come to rescue Pip and Merry. His last memory was of Boromir leaning against a tree, plucking at an arrow. Then darkness fell suddenly. I supposed I was knocked on the head. But why didn't the orcs kill us? Which is a great question, right? And then, of course, as we see with every character, I think there's these moments of self-doubt that are really, we talk about it a lot as it creates this really like recognizable feeling within ourselves to see in something that is mirrored at us. Of these moments of doubt, of, I think oftentimes in current day we call it imposter syndrome, where we just don't think we're up for the part. Of course, this is much more dramatic, right? And the circumstances are much heavier. I wish Gandalf had never persuaded Elrond to let us come. What good have I been? Just a nuisance, a passenger, a piece of luggage. And now I have been stolen, and I am just a piece of luggage for the orcs. I hope Strider or someone will come and claim us, but ought I to hope for it? Won't that throw out all the plans? I wish I could get free. A little moment of doubt, a little moment of self-pity almost, too. But we carry on because there's really nothing... There's nothing we can do. And this is when we find out that there's some orcs that are kind of like taunting Pip, right? I feel like this chapter is difficult to read and discuss because it's so dark and it's so bleak and it feels so helpless and lonely. It's one of the only, like, so far in our readings, there's not many experiences that we have where there's not someone who, well, and Pip and Merry, you know, show great magnitudes of ability in brain, body, mind, and soul. But they're not at the beginning of this chapter free. They're bound. They are helpless. And it's a terrifying moment of like, how can we get out of this? And it takes great acts of bravery for them to even get away in the way that they did. Andrew Wright, him calling himself just a piece of luggage felt like a knife in the heart. Each orc was also driven by their individual agendas of greed, power, hate. Yep. I felt bad for Pip. He's so young compared to the others. He is. And he says that, like, that comes up every once in a while when he has these moments of like, I shouldn't have come. And he realizes that he had an out, right? He had this out. They were like, you guys don't need to go. You guys should go back to the Shire. But they don't take it. So we find out, this is how we find out that why didn't the orcs kill Merry and Pip, right? And this discovery it's well written in. So in a lot of this, we hear the orcs talking about Merry and Pip and what they're going to do. There's a cursed nuisance, and we're in a hurry. Evening's coming on, and we ought to get a move on. Orders, said a third voice in a deep growl. Kill all, but not the halflings. They are to be brought back alive as quickly as possible. That's my orders. And then that's why when on the previous page, when it says they shot a rain of arrows always at Boromir, that harkens back to that of like, that's why they only shot their arrows at Boromir. They were very precisely killing the people they could and not hurting the halflings. Your page is numbered from page 1. I bought mine in a set, so that's probably why. Because even my appendix is in the third book, instead of there being an appendix for what's in each book at the end of each book. Good thing Pippin isn't a deep thinker, or he'd be terrified. Poor Pip and Merry. The orcs also say, no, I heard that one of them has got something that's wanted for the war. Obviously, that's when we find out, like, okay, they're keeping us alive because they think we have the ring, which is one of the most important things that we find out. But this is also where the orcs are talking. They have different desires. So my assumption is that the different orcs had come together because they had blown some sort of whistle asking for help in this battle, or horn, similar to the one Boromir has. That's my assumption. So, okay. Because they're talking about these orders, and what is the orc's name? Who does it say here? Surely somewhere. I don't know who's yelling at the people right now. It's either, there's two big names, I think. Ugluk. Okay, so the different orc groups are fighting about which roads to take and where they're going to go. Then you can wish again, said the growling voice. I am Ugluk. I command. I return to Isengard by the shortest road. Is Saruman the master or the Great Eye? Said the evil voice. We should go back at once to Lugbers. If we could cross the great river, we might, said another voice. But there are not enough of us to venture down to the bridges. I came across, said the evil voice. A winged Nazgul awaits us northward on the east bank. Maybe. Then you'll fly off with our prisoners and get all the pay and praise in Lugbers, and leave us to foot it as best we can through the horse country. No, we must stick together. These lands are dangerous, full of foul rebels and brigands. Hey, we must stick together, growled Ugluk. I don't trust you, little swine. You've no guts outside your own sties. But for us, you'd all have run away. We are the fighting Uruk-hai. We slew the great warrior. We took the prisoners. We are the servants of Saruman the Wise, the White Hand, the hand that gives us man's flesh to eat. We came out of Isengard and led you here, and we shall lead you back the way we choose. I am Ugluk. I have spoken. Okay, sir. Ugluk, Isengard, and thank you, Andrew. Grishnok from Mordor. Okay, because yes, so we've got the Isengard orcs and the Mordor orcs, and the Isengard orcs are with Saruman. And the Mordor orcs are with Sauron. Pippin always reminds me rebels equals elves. Tolkien is so good at coming up with orcish names. There's some good, oh my gosh, when we get to Treebeard was dropping lore. It had me so excited. Pippin always reminds me of all those naive young men being sent off to war during World War I and World War II, had no idea about what they were going to experience. Maybe that's kind of where Tolkien got some because I know this book came out during a time of war. There's a group of northern orcs as well. Those are the ones I wish to go to the Nazgul, maybe. So 3 Treebeard was drawn. Oh my, we are gonna get to it. We're doing this because it's important, but I did say these are some of my favorite chapters. I guess Uruk-hai is not one of my favorite chapters. I am going through a begrudging. I'm not going through it begrudgingly, but it is harder. It doesn't feel as exciting to talk about because the content of it is terrifying. Terrifying. The Northerners are from Khazad-dûm. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is where, so we realize, so Ugluk is like, we work for Saruman the Wise, the white hand. Do you see this white hand we have on all of our stuff? The hand that gives us man's flesh to eat? No, thank you. You have spoken more than enough, Ugluk, sneered the evil voice. I wonder how they would like it in Lugburs. They might think that Ugluk's shoulders need relieving of a swollen head. They might ask where his strange ideas came from. Did they come from Saruman, perhaps? Who does he think he is, setting up on his own with his filthy white badges? They might agree with me, with Grishnak, their trusted messenger. And I, Grishnak, say this: Saruman is a fool, and a dirty, treacherous fool, but the great eye is on him. And so the orcs are fighting, which is kind of funny. Kind of funny. Is it not? Sound the alarm. We have one that isn't a favorite. I did start the stream today by being like, guys, you won't believe it. These are some of my favorite chapters. But Treebeard is genuinely one of my favorite chapters. But that's probably a surprise to no one. To not a single person. Hold on, I'm gonna stand. 1 second. Orcs eat anything. Orcs will eat anything, won't they? It's orc flesh they eat, I'll warrant. Oh. They will eat anything though. Okay. My favorite part though is when they start to fight, but I think because originally I thought that like the Rohan men were there already. They were not. So, but what a great show of power. Ugluk shouted, and a number of other orcs of nearly his own size ran up. Then suddenly, without warning, Ugluk sprung forwards and with 2 swift strokes swept the heads off 2 of his opponents. Grishnak stepped aside and vanished into the shadows. The others gave way, and one stepped backward and fell over Mary's prostrate form with a curse. Yet, that probably saved his life. It is, yeah. The orcs fighting with each other is both amusing and too relatable. Rohirrims. They're on their way. It took them a while. It took them longer to get there than I thought it would. I'm not going to lie. They left us hanging because we knew they were coming, obviously, from the 1st and 2nd chapter. Okay. So there's this display of power, but also we see these cracks in the foundation of the orcs, which, to be fair, did the orcs ever really have a foundation? One time you made lembas bread with your ex. Oh, that sounds lovely. So we see these cracks or whatever, and okay, so this is important. After there's this one guy that falls over Mary, right? Or Pip. He falls over Mary. But his body fell right on top of Pip, still clutching its long saw-edged knife. Okay, so If only it takes that ugly fellow a little while to get his troop under control, I've got a chance. A gleam of hope had come to him. The edge of the black knife had snicked his arm and then slid down to his wrist. He felt the blood trickling on his hand, but he also felt the cold touch of steel against his skin. The orcs were getting ready to march again, but some of the northerners were still unwilling, and the Isengarders slew 2 more before the rest were cowed. There was much cursing and confusion. For that moment, because of the orcs fighting, Pippin was unwatched. His legs were securely bound, but his arms were only tied around the wrists, and his hands were in front of him. He could move them both together, though the bonds were cruelly tight. He pushed the dead orc to one side, then hardly daring to breathe, he drew the knot of the wrist cord up and down against the blade of the knife. It was sharp, and the dead hand held it fast. The cord was cut. Quickly, Pippin took it into his fingers and knotted it again into a loose bracelet of 2 loops and slipped it over his hands. Then he lay very still. Not all orcs want to be involved in that war. They want to do their orc thing. Where there's a whip, there's a way. The motives of the orc is definitely worth discussion. I'm checking in on what Wild has said so far about this section. So I'm glad you were able to make it at least for a little bit. It is a very different story, and it is being told very differently. I was speaking at the beginning of this about how I was a little stressed when I started reading Uruk-hai, and I was I was stressed because of the situations we're in, so I was finding myself reading it really quickly and having to slow myself down a lot more. Just because I was like, I know everything's gonna be okay, but I want it to be okay sooner rather than later. So if I read faster, it'll be okay sooner rather than later. But also, if I read faster, I miss a lot more detail. Yes, we do get our hobbits back. But now we get to see what happens to the orcs through Pippin's eyes. Here I come briefly. Yes, okay. I like that you said he witnesses 3 ! Different tribes of orcs fighting with one another. Wild had it all right here for us. Uruk-hai from Isengard under Ugluk. Lanky ones from Lugbers under Grishnak, and another party from the north, which I guess to mean Moria. Or, as someone else said, maybe Khazad-dûm. You'll be in and out, but you're around now. Okay, perfect. And yes, we do see clearly that there's tension between the orcs and where they want to go, and also what their goals are, because they all have different goals and different leaders, and just because they're together now doesn't mean they necessarily want to work together, which ultimately does create the beginning of their downfall. Because I was noticing when we're reading this, it's interesting to have this group that has a very like the Fellowship had a very similar goal, or started out with the same goal, but also with permission to depart from the group as needed and as necessary. But they all started knowing what their purpose was. And the orcs all have different goals. And so you've got these 3 strong groups that have different leaders and have different goals. And that leads to these more intense arguments or disruptive moments of choice, because it's not which way is safer, which way gets us to our shared destination. It's, I want to go my way because my leader wants the ring, or I want to go my way, or because my leader wants the ring, or whatnot. He did knot it together again. Pippin did knot his thing together again. Sorry, I just went off again on the orcs, because I was reading through what some of what Wild had said. Because if you haven't ever gone to the community section on Mondays and read some of the posts that I put in there when I ask for any like thoughts or what we're going to talk about, Wild always puts in these like really phenomenal recaps. And if it didn't feel like cheating, I would just read them word for word every time. We have before, but it does feel a little bit like cheating sometimes. So I tried to sprinkle it in. Dennis, hello. Andrew also always puts in some really good behind the scenes notes about like the original writings, and the creation of the work that we're reading. So if you guys haven't ever checked that out, you absolutely should. Always good stuff in there. Always good bants. Bants positive, not bants like tension. Okay, so Pippin, as Wild said, a rare moment of intelligence from Pippin. Pippin acts quickly and wisely, and this is such a crucial moment, because if he hadn't had this little moment of bravery, I'm fine. I'm not crying at all. No. I just don't have I try to be quiet and like speak in a more quiet tone when we have these. It helps because I don't have headphones or like music and sound blaring into my ears. But I'm good now. I'm good. This section is like a little heavy, so it's not as like, it's probably not pulling like exciting tones out of me. When we get to the Treebeard section though, you absolutely will get that. Okay, so this is the second so we have these moments of bravery, but we also have these moments of luck. And one of the biggest moments of luck is when they have to untie our legs, which really does seem like a little hasty, right? So they untie Pip and Merry's legs because the orcs don't want to continue carrying them around. So they make them run instead, which honestly just sounds like you're going to slow everyone down anyway. But who am I to lead an order of orcs? You know, if I were to lead them, I'd lead them right off of a cliff. So to be fair, I'm not the one to lead them. But not only does unbinding their feet allows Merry and Pip to, or not Merry and Pip, but it allows Pip this moment. He has the elven cloak on, right? And he has the leaf brooch on. As we all know, don't be hasty. Hobbits do have little legs. But he has this leaf brooch on his cloak, right? He takes this off. And as they're running, so Pippin and Merry both have 3 orcs to each of them, surrounding them, making sure they don't like try to run away. Which, honestly, one, they have to be brought there alive. So they have this like little bit of plot armor for that. And then orcs are so much stronger than hobbits, I would imagine. So it's kind of, I feel like it would kind of be impossible to escape them in this way. So they know that very well. But nonetheless, Pip takes a very big, brave choice. Because he knows that Strider has a very keen eye and will be looking for clues if he's following them at all. But he also thinks, why would they be following after Merry and I? They're gonna go with Frodo. But we know that's not the case. We know that Aragorn is actually following, and all these choices that Pip is making are crucial to their quest. So in this moment, when his feet are unbound, he takes an opportunity to run off. There was a moment of turmoil and confusion. So Pippin goes, no hope for escape, but there is hope that I have left some of my own marks unspoiled on the wet ground. He groped with his 2 tied hands at his throat and unclasped the brooch of his cloak. Just as long arms and hard claws seized him, he let it fall. There. I suppose it will lie until the end of time, he thought. I don't know why I did it. If the others have escaped, they've probably all gone with Frodo. It's so sad to think that he's like, it makes it even braver that he took that chance, even thinking like there's no possibility that they're even following us. Oh yeah, they did. Yes, thank you for bringing up. The orcs fed or gave Merry and Pip some something. What do we think it is? I forgot about that. So because they were very both Merry and Pip were very tired and hurt, and they hadn't eaten, so they were very hungry and they were very weak. And so the orcs, when they tried to pick up Pippin and make him walk, right, when they unbound his legs, and he kept falling down. And so Ugluk thrust a flask between his teeth and poured some burning liquid down his throat. He felt a hot, fierce glow flow through him. The pain in his legs and ankles vanished. He could stand. And then he does the same thing to Merry, except for Merry has this gash on his head. So they put this ointment on his head, and I can't find it, but Andrew put part of it in there. Merry's gash in his forehead gave him no more trouble, but he bore a brown scar to the end of his days. So whatever they're doing, they have some interesting and really powerful ointments. Let's go, Dennis. Welcome to the Patreon. Red Bull, perhaps? Yes, it must be Red Bull. Maybe perhaps it's an iced coffee. Perhaps. I'm not sure. Yes, okay. So the hobbits are stronger. They're stronger asterisk on drugs. I don't know what they're on something. But nevertheless, they are running along with the orcs. Pippin got away, dropped his thing on the ground, and we're back to running with the orcs. And the orcs are continuing to fight, blah, 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 not blah, blah, blah. Just kind of orc fighting. Some sort of orcish morvar for drink and some medieval medicine. I'm kind of scared of what's in it. I feel like, no, I don't know. There wouldn't be like, yeah, the hobbits were being whipped. Andrew's correct. The hobbits licked every now and again with a cruel thong cunningly handled to keep them running. It's so... I honestly can't imagine. It's hard to imagine that how they even survived the running part of this, much less anything else. So let's so at some point the orcs realize that the Rohans, the horsemen as they call them, are on their tail and they're coming for them. So they try to keep running. So they are chasing after us. The orcs with Merry and Pip try to keep running. At some point they put us back onto their shoulders and continue to run off. The riders away eastward were already level with the orcs, galloping over the plain. The riders were very strategically like hemming them in and preventing them from scattering and driving them along the line of the river. But of course, we don't, as in from Pippin's perspective, we don't actually know who they are. So Pippin's like, I wonder what kind of folk they are. He wished now that he had learned more in Rivendell and looked more at maps and things. But in those days, the plans for the journey seemed to be in more competent hands, and he had never reckoned with being cut off from Gandalf or from Strider or even from Frodo. All that he could remember about Rohan was that Gandalf's horse Shadowfax had come from that land. That sounded hopeful, as far as it went. He ate the stale gray bread hungrily. Yeah, so at one point the orcs do give them bread and meat. Oh, our legs do get bound again. That's right. But yeah, the hobbits don't eat the meat, which is a strange thing for hobbits to not eat. That lets you know how disgusting it is. A twisted orc version of a health tonic and energy booster. Oh, okay. So the orcs are like stuck in this spot for the night, and it sounds like they're surrounded. It says the horsemen had encircled them. A small band disobeyed Ugluk's command and ran on towards the forest. Only 3 returned. So we get these little sprinkles of the forest being somewhere you don't want to go. They put the halflings down. They do rebind Merry and Pip's legs. And for a moment, the orcs are fighting. And so Merry and Pip manage to whisper together for a while, and they talk about their lembas bread. And then Pip is about to tell Merry that he's unbound his hands when an orc kicks him, and he realizes that it's quieted down and the guards are being more watchful. So he's like, okay, I can't. So he has to stop right there, not able to share more. And there's a moment when I can't tell. Okay, I don't think the sun has risen yet, but they find a bunch of dead orcs. So, oh wait, no, that's a different spot. Oh, okay, so we do see that there's a line that says, there's one thing the fine fellows don't know. Mahu and his lads are in the forest, and they should turn up any time now. Which, who is that? Started following on Twitch. Thank you, Dennis. Another person who avoids maps. Join the club. This is a safe people for people who like the maps, but it's also a safe place for people who can't read maps. We don't map shame. Okay. Thank you. Also, I'll take a moment to self-promo myself. Tomorrow on Twitch, I'm doing a 12-hour stream from about 11 a.m. Central to 11 p.m. Central. It'll start somewhere between 10 and 11. I'm going to try to work out in the morning before we start it. It's all going to be like horror games. So if you want to come hang out for a fun 12-hour stream, you know where to do it. Twitch.tv/LIPPSMACKER. But that's not where we are. We're here. We're talking about Lord of the Rings. Let's keep going. Let's get to the important part, okay? The orcs are fighting. They find some dead orcs. The orcs are mad. The orcs and the Rohans, they're fighting. Great. There is a moment when Grishnock comes over and he starts fondling Merry and Pip, and he's clearly looking for something. And so in another moment of braveness and wiseness, in Eastern times, that's like noon Eastern. So they're starting to get fondled by Grishnock, right? And he's clearly looking for something. So they see this opportunity to tease him. And they go, it isn't easy. I don't think you will find it that way. It isn't easy to find. Find it? Find what? What are you talking about, little one? Pippin is silent, and then suddenly he goes, Gollum, Gollum. Nothing, my precious. I can't do a Gollum voice. I tried to get into my throat there for you guys. I couldn't. Do you want it or not? And what would you give for it? What would I give for it? What do you mean? We mean that it's no good groping in the dark. We could save you time and trouble, but you must untie our legs first, or we'll do nothing and say nothing. We don't know who Ugluk is talking about yet, just one of his buddies, so we know we don't like them. Yeah, well, if it's an orc on site, you know what I mean? My dear tender little fools, hissed Grishnak, everything you have and everything you know will be got out of you in due time. Everything. You'll wish there was more that you could tell to satisfy the questioner. Indeed you will, quite soon. We shan't hurry the inquiry. Oh dear, no. What do you think you've been kept alive for, my dear little fellows? Please believe me when I say that it was not out of kindness. That's not even one of Ugluk's faults. So I think it's quite smart and brave and wise of them, but it doesn't really truly work because Grishnak begins to lose his temper because Mary brings up Saruman. Mary says, I find it quite easy to believe, but you haven't got your prey home yet, and it doesn't seem to be going your way. Whatever happens. If we come to Isengard, it won't be the great Grishnak that benefits. Saruman will take all that he can find. If you want anything for yourself, now's the time to do a deal. Grishnak began to lose his temper. The name of Saruman seemed especially to enrage him. Time was passing and the disturbance was dying down. Ugluk or the Isengarders might return at any minute. Have you got it, either of you? He snarled, and they asked him to untie their legs. They felt the orc's arms trembling violently. Curse you, you filthy little vermin. Untie your legs. I'll untie every string in your bodies. Do you think I can't search you to the bone? Search you? I'll cut you both to quivering shreds. I don't need the help of your legs to get you away and have you all to myself. Which, not great. Not great to have angered Grishnak. Ugluk and Grishnak really, they are best friends. If we come to Isengard, it won't be that great, Grishnak. It won't be the great Grishnak that benefits. It won't be. There's the power of words and the power of names is something that comes across a lot in these chapters too, because we see that just by mentioning Saruman, we deeply anger Grishnak, right? And when we get to Treebeard, we simply mention Gandalf and we gain the respect of Treebeard, at least for the moment. And I think that's so important to realize that, like, the names and the histories of the people spread far and wide. What makes Grishnak great anyway? It's just because he says he's great, right? That's a great question, Wild. So Grishnak, I wrote, okay, dramatic and intense. Grishnak picks up the hobbits and he starts running away with them. And I'll just read it. After going a dozen yards, he halted, peering and listening. Nothing could be seen or heard. He crept slowly on, bent almost double. Then he squatted and listened again. Then he stood up, as if to risk a sudden dash. At that very moment, the dark form of a rider loomed up right in front of him. A horse snorted and reared. A man called out. Grishnak flung himself on the ground flat, dragging the hobbits under him. Then he drew his sword. No doubt he meant to kill his captives, rather than allow them to escape or to be rescued, but it was his undoing. But it was his undoing. The sword rang faintly and glinted a little in the light of the fire away to his left. An arrow came wittingly out of the gloom. It was aimed with skill, or guided by fate, and it pierced his right hand. He dropped the sword and shrieked. There was a quick beat of hoofs, and even as Grishnak leaped up and ran, he was ridden down and his spear passed through him. He gave a hideous, shivering cry. and lay still. And now the hobbits are free. Well, not quite yet. They have to... Finally, Pip is like, okay, don't worry. My hands are actually not tied together. He unties his hands. They both eat some limboss bread, 2 or 3 pieces each. They untie, they use a blade to untie their feet, unbind their feet. And we're still not out of the woods yet, right? Or rather to say we're not in the woods yet, because they can't walk. They can't walk, and probably for the best, because they don't want to be seen anyway, so they have to crawl. They're in too much pain to walk. So they turn and they walk, but then so they give themselves a little bit of time. They make it towards the river, and then they're able to stand up and start walking. It's about to be day, I believe, and they're like, we need to get going. If Grishnak is sent by Bar-Baradur to the west, flown in by Nazgul, he's probably high in Mordor's ranks. Well, yeah. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. You've heard, oh yes, give me your criticism. I've heard a criticism of the film that they make 2 young hobbits are obsessed with food. However, here's an explicit example from the book. Pippin and Merry have just escaped from the orcs. What's the first thing they say? You better have a bit of limboss first. Do they not do that in the... Yeah. What's the criticism? That the 2 young hobbits are... Interesting. I think that the use of food, in a way, Tolkien uses the food as a way of storytelling, because we know that hobbits love food, right? And even in the movie, we see that at the beginning. And it's such a powerful way to, like, say the hobbits don't feel safe without saying, we didn't feel safe, so we didn't eat the food. It's like, we know that hobbits will eat and love to eat and will have 2 breakfasts. But, like, if they're handed a piece of meat from an orc and they don't eat it, it's something like, hey, we're not safe. Maybe they just don't do as good of a job in that in the movie. Pippin in the film is always talking about being hungry. I think it's endearing. Okay, so one thing though, which Merry, so we knew that Pip did not know where he was, right? Merry, on the other hand, did. Merry had spent his time in Rivendell reading the maps and learning the locations, which turns out to be quite useful here. But they take a moment to watch the fights continue, and they see Ugluk, right? But they're like, okay, we need to go. We've watched too long, said Merry. There's Ugluk. I don't want to meet him again. The hobbits turned and fled deep into the shadows of the wood. So it was that they did not see the last stand when Ugluk was overtaken and brought to bay at the very edge of Fangorn. There he was slain at last by Eomer, the 3rd Marshal of the Mark, who dismounted and fought him sword to sword. And over the wide fields the keen-eyed riders hunted down the few orcs that had escaped and still had strength to fly. Then when they had laid their fallen comrades in a mound and had sung their praises, the riders made a great fire and scattered the ashes of their enemies. So ended the raid, and no news of it came ever back, either to Mordor or to Isengard, but the smoke of the burning rose high to heaven and was seen by many watchful eyes. The loudest critics are often the Lord of the Rings fans who only saw the film and haven't read the books. That it definitely, yeah, if people are criticizing that hobbits are obsessed with food, to me, that's like, not only is it a way that Tolkien tells the story with food as like, we can only eat when it's safe, right? We see it even in the first book where like there's moments where we're not allowed to eat all that we want to eat because it's not safe enough to eat. Or like there's all these moments where it's like, oh, we can finally have a big feast. So it's very, to me, it's a very like, that's just who hobbits are. You got to love the hobbitses. Gollum. Okay, now we get to my favorite chapter. Neither Isengard nor Mordor know what happened. Only the hobbits were caught and possibly the ring with them. Oh yeah, that is important, isn't it? Yeah, that chapter was important. It was. But it's no Treebeard. And this is where we get into my favorite part, because the Treebeard was probably my favorite character in the movie. And as I was reading this, I was like, I am just a tree. I'm just a tree. I think Merry or Pip, there's a quote at some point where Merry or Pip is like, yeah, they're just like cows. Right now, they're just like cows gnawing on some grass, but they could very quickly become bulls charging. Like they're roused. And I was like, that's... Yeah, I too do not rouse easily, but when I am roused, carry on. Okay, so let's read the first paragraph of this and then get into Treebeard. We'll talk about, he drops a lot of lore, so let's go through the lore. And if you guys have any questions along the way or behind the scenes you want to drop in chat whilst we read this, please do. Meanwhile, the hobbits went with as much speed as the dark and tangled forest allowed, following the light of the running stream, westward and up towards the slopes of the mountains, deeper and deeper into Fangorn. Slowly their fear of the orcs died away, and their pace slackened. A queer, stifling feeling came over them, as if the air were too thin or too scanty for breathing. At last Merry halted. "We can't go on like this," he panted. "I want some air." So they take a moment to stop at this stream. One time a bull chased you, Ark. Oh my god, that's scary. They dip their feet in, they have some handfuls of water, they refresh them, and they just take this moment to rest, which they need. And they make note, they're like, it's very dim, it's very stuffy. If we could breathe properly, we could probably go on further. Okay, yes, and then we get some good descriptions of the woods. Look at all those weeping, trailing beards and whiskers of lichen, and most of the trees seem to be half covered with ragged, dry leaves that have never fallen. Untidy. I can't imagine what spring would look like here if it ever comes. Still less a spring cleaning. But the sun, at any rate, must peep in sometimes. It does not look or feel at all like Bilbo's description of Mirkwood. That was all dark and black and the home of dark black things. This is just dim and frightfully tree-ish. You can't imagine animals living here at all or staying for long. No, nor hobbits. And I don't like the thought of trying to get through it either. Nothing to eat for 100 miles, I should guess. How are our supplies? So this is where we learn we're low on lembas. And it puts us into this like much more desperate, and they also don't have any blankets. So we feel this much more desperate fear of we're not safe. We're in the woods. The woods themselves are not known to be safe. We don't have food and we don't have blankets. We can't stay warm. But as they're saying this, they become aware of this yellow light that had appeared some way further into the wood. Shafts of sunlight seemed suddenly to have pierced the forest roof. The sun must have run into a cloud while we've been under the trees, and now she has run out again, or else she has climbed high enough to look down through some opening. It isn't far. Let's go and investigate. So they walk to investigate this open, sunny spot. The twigs of the trees at its foot... Oh, wait. They get there. No trees grew on it, and the sun was falling full on its stony face. The twigs of the trees at its foot were stretched out stiff and still, as if reaching out to the warmth. Where all had looked so shabby and gray before, the wood now gleamed with rich browns, and with the smooth black grays of bark like polished leather. The boles of the trees glowed with a soft green like young grass. Early spring, or a fleeting vision of it, was about them. Sauron's very vague information is the ring is in Rohan now. Oh, thank you, Kelly. Gandalf said Treebeard is the oldest living thing in Middle-earth, which kind of hints at Bombadil being a spirit, being as he is older, but maybe not living. Oh. Gary. That's, yep. Yep. Okay, so we make it to this opening where they're sitting in the sun, and they're like, yes, okay, great. And they're like, oh man, the sun is going to leave us. It's a pity. This shaggy old forest looks so different in the sunlight. I almost feel I liked the place. And this is where we meet Treebeard. Almost felt like you liked the forest? That's good. That's uncommonly kind of you, said the strange voice. Turn round and let me have a look at your faces. I almost feel like I dislike you both. But do not let us be hasty. Turn around. A large, knob-knuckled hand was laid on each of their shoulders, and they were twisted round gently but irresistibly. Then 2 great arms lifted them up. They found that they were looking at a most extraordinary face. It belonged to a large man-like, almost troll-like figure, at least 14 foot high, very sturdy with a tall head and hardly any neck. Whether it was clad in stuff like green and gray bark, or whether that was its hide, was difficult to say. At any rate, the arms, at a short distance from the trunk, were not wrinkled, but covered with a brown, smooth skin. The large feet had 7 toes each. The lower part of the long face was covered with a sweeping gray beard, bushy, almost twiggy at the roots, thin and mossy at the ends. But at the moment the hobbits noted little. But the eyes, these deep eyes, were now surveying them, slow and solemn, but penetrating. They were brown, shot with a green light. Often afterwards, Pippin tried to describe his first impression of them. I almost feel that I dislike you both, but do not let us be hasty. Bombadil is a puppet on Christopher Tolkien's shelf. And you're right. Okay, so that's our introduction to Treebeard. I love him. I understand Treebeard deeply. It's kind of an intimidating moment of meeting him, right? In the BBC radio production, Treebeard is played by Stephen Thorne, film, TV, radio, stage actor, and audiobook reader. Very tall, very deep voice. Oh, Stephen Thorne. Very odd indeed. Do not be hasty, that is my motto. But if I had seen you before I heard your voices, I liked them. Nice little voices. They reminded me of something I cannot remember. If I had seen you before I heard you, I should have just trodden on you, taking you for little orcs, and found out my mistake afterwards. Very odd you are indeed, root and twig, very odd. Pippin, though still amazed, no longer felt afraid, so we feel safe. And we start to have discourse with Treebeard. We don't know his name yet, or what he will let us call him, rather. So he introduced himself. I am an Ent, or that's what they call me. Yes, Ent is the word. The Ent I am, you might say, in your manner of speaking. Fangorn is my name, according to some. Treebeard, others make it Treebeard will do. And they ask what his real name is. Bold of Mary. Now that you would be telling, not so hasty, and I am doing the asking. You are in my country. What are you, I wonder? I cannot place you. You do not seem to come in the old lists that I learned when I was young. And here Treebeard sings a song, which is so interesting. It's such a lovely little okay, so you have this list of the people. Learn now the lore of living creatures. First name the 4, the free peoples. Eldest of all, the elf children. Dwarf the delver, dark are his houses, and to the earth born old as mountains. Man the mortal, master of horses. Beaver the builder, buck the leaper, bear be hunter, boar the fighter, hound is hungry, hare is fearful. Eagle is eerie, ox in pasture, hart-horn crowned, hawk is swiftest, swan the widest, serpent coldest. How did it go? It was a long list, but anyway, you do not seem to fit in anywhere. We always seem to have got left out of the old list and the old stories. Yet we've been about for quite a long time. We're hobbits. Why not make a new line? Half-grown hobbits, the hole dwellers. Put us in amongst the four, next to man, the big people, and you've got it. Who calls you hobbits, though? That does not sound elvish to me. Elvish made all the old words. They began it. I love the song list of creatures. Me too. In the movie, Treebeard's slowness is funny. In the book, he is slow but steady. For me, it was always clear once he is moving, he is unstoppable. I love that, Kelly. Yeah. One thing that jarred with me in the film was that they used the Gimli actor as the voice. Really? Gimli is the same voice actor for Treebeard? That took you out of the film briefly? Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Those kinds of things can do that. Absolutely. Okay, so I think that the conversation, okay, hold on. Let me have my thoughts. So we just had this chapter, right, which is very tense and scary and not safe. And then we move into this chapter where it's like almost whimsical. We're literally meeting a walking tree and having like not joyous, but like good banter. We're literally bantering with a tree. And it's like, it is joyous to read. It's much more joyous to read in comparison. Okay, so I just think it's a lovely introduction to Treebeard. For I'm not going to tell you my name, not at any rate. For one thing, it would take a long time, while my name is growing all the time, and I've lived a very long time. So my name is like a story. Real names tell you the story of things they belong to in my language, in the old Intish, as you might say. It is a lovely language, but it takes a very long time to say anything in it, because we do not say anything in it unless it is worth taking a long time to say and to listen to. That's probably the only thing different between me and an Ent, is that I speak quickly, and not all the times do my thoughts make sense. No. But I am slow to anger, and for that, I feel kinship with him. I do not know I just love the writing of the speaking of Treebeard, so I'm just going to read a lot of what he said because I think it's so beautiful and marvelous. I do not know what the world is in the outside languages. You know, the things we are on, where I stand and I look out on fine mornings and think about the sun and the grass beyond the wood and the horses and the clouds and the unfolding of the world. What is going on? What is Gandalf up to? And these Barum, he made a deep rumbling noise like a discord on a great organ. These orcs and young Sauermen down at Isengard. I like news, but not too quick now. La 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 la, rumba, kamanda, linderbrimi equals hill. Oh. The only use 7 toes, although only Treebeard has 7. Other Ents have more or less. Okay, I don't have 7 toes. Okay. I'm not a tree. Ooh, I'll spill my coffee. Yes, I do know him. The only wizard that really... so Treebeard had asked about Gandalf, and we're like, oh, you know Gandalf. Treebeard's like, yeah, of course. Do you know him? And they said, yes, we did. He was a great friend, and he was our guide. So that's what I'm saying. Gandalf is almost like a safe word, whereas like Sauron is like the opposite of a safe word, straight to jail. But you speak of Master Gandalf as if he was in a story that had come to an end. Yes, we do. The story seems to be going on, but I am afraid Gandalf has fallen out of it. Well, I do not know what to say. Come now. If you would like to hear more, said Mary, we will tell you, but it will take some time. Wouldn't you like to put us down? Couldn't we sit here together in the sun while it lasts? You must be getting tired of holding us up. Tired? No, I'm not tired. I do not easily get tired, and I do not sit down. I am not very bendable. But there, the sun is going in. Let us leave this. Did you say what you call it? Hill, suggested Pippin. Shelf? Step? Hill, yes, that was it. But it is a hasty word for a thing that has stood here ever since this part of the world was shaped. Never mind, let us leave it and go. So we start to head to Treebeard's home. And this is where we start to learn a little bit more lore from Treebeard. At once he set off with long, deliberate strides through the trees, deeper and deeper into the wood, never far from the stream, climbing steadily up towards the slopes of the mountains. Many of the trees seemed asleep, or as unaware of him as of any other creature that merely passed by, but some quivered and some raised up their branches above his head as he approached. All the while as he walked, he talked to himself in a long-running stream of musical sounds. Pippin asks, why did Celeborn warn us against your forest? Oh, did he now? And I might have said much the same if you had been going the other way. Do not risk getting entangled in the woods of Lothlorien. Perhaps they are right. Maybe it is fading, not growing. Land of the Valley of Singing Gold, that was it once upon a time. Now it is the Dream Flower. Ah, well, but it is a queer place, and not for just anyone to venture in. I am surprised that you ever got out, but much more surprised that you ever got in. That has not happened to strangers for many, many a year. Neither this country nor anything else outside the Golden Wood is what it was when Celeborn was young still. That is what they used to say. Things have changed, but it is still true in places. Hold on. I didn't have this book with me when I want to see Appendix F under Ents. Give me the appendix. Appendix F. Under Ents. Trolls, dwarves, Ents. Okay. Forest many shadowed, deep valley back, deep valley forested, gloomy land. And which by Treebeard meant more or less. There's a black shadow in the deep dales of the forest. So he says to them, forest many shadowed, deep valley black, deep valley forested, gloomy land. Naturally. And that is what they used to say. Things have changed, but it is still true in places. The trees and the Ents. I do not understand all that goes on myself, so I cannot explain it to you. Some of us are still true Ents, and lively enough in our fashion, but many are growing sleepy, going tree-ish, as you might say. Most of the trees are just trees, of course, but many are half awake. Some are quite wide awake, and few are, well, getting entish. That is going on all the time. When that happens to a tree, you find that some have bad hearts. Nothing to do with their wood. I do not mean that. Why, I knew some good old willows down to Entwash, gone long ago, alas. They were quite hollow, and indeed they were falling all to pieces, but as quiet and sweet-spoken as a young leaf. And then there are some trees in the valley under the mountains, sound as a bell and bad right through. That sort of thing seems to spread. There used to be some very dangerous parts in the country there are still some very black patches. Okay, now the Tolkien virus officially got you reading and having the appendix beside you to check it constantly. I meant to do that. I was reading it in the sauna at the gym. And I was like, oh, I wish I had the appendix with me. So I had to go grab it and be like, hold a minute. Yes, that's why we're here. We're here to make me, we're here to, this is an indoctrination. Okay, so we hear about all these like hollow moments, like areas of darkness that have never lifted from the great darkness, from what I imagine to be like the big war we hear about early on. I've not read this Silmarillion. No, Gary, no, I haven't. And yet again, Ents are more like, okay, so we are tree herds, we old Ents. Few enough of us are left now. Sheep get like shepherd, and shepherd like sheep, it is said, but slowly, and neither have long in the world. It is quicker and closer with trees and Ents, and they walk down the ages together. For Ents are more like elves, less interested in themselves than men are, and better at getting inside other things. And yet again, Ents are more like men, more changeable than elves are, and quicker at taking the color of the outside, you might say, or better than both, for they are steadier and keep their minds on things longer. Some of my kin look just like trees now and need something great to rouse them, and they speak only in whispers, but some of my trees are limb-lithe, and many can talk to me. Elves began it, of course, waking trees up and teaching them to speak and learning their tree talk. They always wished to talk to everything, the old elves did. But then the great darkness came, and they passed away over the sea, or fled into far valleys and hid themselves, and made songs about days that would never come again, never again. There was all one wood once upon a time, from here to the mountain of Loon, and this was just the east end. Sheep get like shepherd, and shepherds like sheep, it is said. Really, who says that? Look, I love the way Treebeard speaks. I do. It's like, it's all a riddle, all a beautiful riddle. Okay, so here is the story of the trees. Or this is Treebeard's chant. In the willow meads of Tazarinian, I walked in the spring. Ah, the sight and smell of the spring of Nan Tosarian, and I said that was good. I wandered in summer in the elm woods of Osiriand. Ah, the light and the music in the summer by the 7 rivers of Osir, and I thought that was best. To the beaches of Neldroth I came in the autumn. Ah, the gold and the red and the sighing of leaves in the autumn, and Tar Na Neldor. It was more than my desire. To the pine trees upon the highland of Dorthonian I climbed in the winter. Ah, the wind and the whiteness and the black branches of winter upon Orad Nathan. My voice went up and sang in the sky, and now all those lands lie under the wave, and I walk in Amberona and Taramarina and Aldolome, in my own land in the country of Fangorn, where the roots are long and the years lie thicker than the leaves, and Tarmor Nolomi. He ended and strode on silently, and in all the wood, as far as ear could reach, there was not a sound. You won't find some of those things on the map in the book. You need a much older map. The world has changed. You know what I'll add to my throne? I'll add a Middle-earth map, and I'll hang it on this wall so I can look at it all the time if someone buys it. That's the only way I'll look at a map. I wish, actually. Can you imagine if there was just a map back here and we just... I love having a blank wall behind me now. Although someone told me yesterday that my new background looks like I'm a white man starting a podcast. So we're gonna have to get some decorations. Gonna have to get some decorations up there, y'all. All right, let's get through this. We're near the end of this. Okay, so I could read you everything that Treebeard says, but look, Maybe that's not fair. Hold on, how many? Okay, so Treebeard had gone 70,000 ent strides that day. Just an FYI, really, no pressure to look at a map. No, I know, Andrew, I know. I was just thinking how, like, the maps are very well done. You aren't like Treebeard. You were like Pip. He didn't look at the maps in Rivendell too. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Okay, so they make it to this house that Treebeard has, and they eat, and they have, or he gives them some sort of substance that makes them really warm. And then Treebeard's like, okay, well, I'm gonna lay on the floor so that this refreshment doesn't go all the way up to my head. I will lie down. This will prevent this drink from rising to my head and sending me to sleep. So they tell their tale of how they got to where they are, Merry and Pip. They tell of the fellowship, but they tell Treebeard everything except they tell him nothing of the ring. Treebeard is wise. He says, that is a bundle of news, and no mistake. You have not told me all. No, indeed, not by a long way, but I do not doubt that you are doing as Gandalf would wish. There is something very big going on, that I can see, and what it is, maybe I shall learn in good time or in bad time, by root and twig, but it is a strange business. Upsprout a little folk there are not in the old list, and behold, the 9 forgotten riders reappear to hunt them, and Gandalf takes them on a great journey, and Galadriel harbors them in Caras Galadon, and orcs pursue them down all the leagues of Wilderland. Indeed, they seem to be caught up in a great storm. I hope they weather it. I have not troubled about the great wars. They mostly concern elves and men. That is the business of wizards. Wizards are always troubled about the future. I do not like worrying about the future. I am not altogether on anybody's side, because nobody is altogether on my side. If you understand me, nobody cares for the woods as I care for them, not even elves nowadays. Still, I take more kindly to elves than to others. If that was the elves that cured us of dumbness long ago, and that was a great gift that cannot be forgotten, though our ways have parted since, and there are some things, of course, whose side I am altogether not on. I am against them altogether, those Burarum. He again made a deep rumble of disgust. These orcs and their masters. The hobbits mentioned Tom Bombadil behind the scenes in the draft. There was a section when Treebeard mentions knowing him. Not sure why that was deleted. It would tie things together in an interesting way. It would. Late, but never too late for Tolkien. Never too late, Eric. I always wonder about the walking trees scene north. Pedro, I was thinking about those a lot too. And it pops back up because we did tell Treebeard a lot about the Shire, right? And he does ask if we had ever seen any trees, any Ents out there. Yeah. He said, you've never seen any Ents around there, do you? Well, not Ents, Entwives, I should really say. And Pippin goes, Entwives, are they like you at all? Well, no, I do not really know now. But they would like your country, so I just wondered. And I think that is very telling. It's like, who are you in love with? We do find out eventually, though. I'm not fully on anybody's side because nobody is fully on my side. I think that's why I think Treebeard is such this, like, I mean, if you were to write a character that is a tree, I think he's incredibly well written. He's grounded, he's rooted, he's intentional, he's slow, he's wise. You know? I think that's everything that a tree is. Coming from forestry and environmental restoration background, the discussion of sides is important to me. Also, there is the Lorax. Oh, I don't think I've ever seen the Lorax. I don't know much about the Lorax, actually. Okay. Treebeard does give us a haunting recollection of Saruman, and because Saruman used to come into the forest, right, and have these conversations with Treebeard. And he was quiet to begin with, but his fame began to grow. I told him many things that he would never have found out by himself, but he never repaid me in like kind. I cannot remember that he ever told me anything, and he got more and more like that. His face, as I remember it, I have not seen it for many a day, became like windows in a stone wall, windows with shutters inside. I think that I now understand what he is up to. He is plotting to become a power. He has a mind of metal and wheels, and he does not care for growing things, except as far as they serve him for the moment. And now it is clear that he is a black traitor. He has taken up with foul folk, with the orcs, who's worse than that. He has been doing something to them, something dangerous. For these Isengarders are more like wicked men. It is a mark of evil things that come in great darkness that they cannot abide the sun. But Saruman's orcs can endure it, even if they hate it. I wonder what he has done. And they men he has ruined, or he has blended the races of orcs and men. That would be a black evil. Oh, The Lorax is a book. It's a movie too, isn't it? He's rooted, but rootless. You're not wrong, Eric. You're not wrong. Treebeard rumbled for a moment, as if he was pronouncing some deep subterranean entish malediction. Some time ago, I began to wonder how orcs dared to pass through my woods so freely. Only lately did I guess that Sauron was to blame, and that long ago he had been spying out all the ways and discovering my secrets. He and his foul folk are making havoc now. Down on the borders they are felling trees, good trees. Some of the trees they just cut down and leave to rot, orc mischief that, but most are hewn up and carried off to feed the fires of Orthanc. There is always a smoke rising from Isengard these days. Curse him, root and branch. I love that. Many of those trees were my friends, creatures I had known from nut and acorn. Many had voices of their own that are lost forever now. And there are wastes of stump and bramble where once there were singing groves. I have been idle. I have let things slip. It must stop. There was a flicker like green fire in his eyes, and his beard stood out stiff as a great besom. I will stop it, he boomed, and you shall come with me. You may be able to help me. You will be helping your own friends that way too. For if Saruman is not checked, Rohan and Gondor will have an enemy behind as well as in front. Our roads go together to Isengard. We will come with you, said Merry. We will do what we can. Yes, said Pippin. I should like to see what the White Hand has overthrown. I should like to be there, even if I could not be of much use. Good, good. But I spoke hastily. We must not be hasty. I have become too hot. I must cool myself and think, for it is easier to shout stop than to do it. And that is true. That is true. In the book, there is more of a backstory of Saruman. Yeah, there is. Yeah. It leads me to wonder, like, how, I mean, Treebeard is very, very wise, right? But it does lead me to wonder, like, how did Gandalf not see the evil within Saruman? I must cool myself and think, for it is easier to shout stop than to do it. I think that's a lesson we can all hold dear and take with us. Another important thing is that there's few trees left, few ends left. And then Merry and Pepper are like, oh, they died? He's like, no. Did I say die? None have died from inside, as you might say. Some have fallen in the evil chances of the long years, of course, and more have grown tree-ish. But there were never many of us, and we have not increased. There have been no Entings, no children, you would say, not for a terrible long count of years. You see, we lost the Entwives. And he's like, oh, they died? They did not die. I never said died. We lost them. We lost them and we cannot find them. He's like, I thought most folks knew that. There's an entire story. Let me tell you this abridged version of this story of how we lost the Entwives. Saruman can charm people with his voice. Well, that's terrifying. Here's the story of how we lost the Entwives. Let's read it, y'all. It is rather a strange and sad story, he went on after a pause. When the world was young and the woods were wide and wild, the Ents and the Entwives, and there were Ent maidens then, the loveliness of Fimbrethil, of Wandlim, the light-footed in the days of our youth, they walked together and they housed together, but our hearts did not go on growing in the same way. The Ents gave their love to things that they met in the world, and the Entwives gave their thought to other things. For the Ents loved the great trees and the wild woods and the slopes of the high hills, and they drank of the mountain stream and ate only such fruit as the trees let fall in their path. And they learned of the elves and spoke with the trees. But the Entwives gave their minds to the lesser trees and to the meads and the sunshine beyond the feet of the forest, and they saw the sloe and the thicket and the wild apple and the cherry blossoming in the spring, and the green herbs and the waterlands in summer, and the seeding grass in the autumn fields. They did not desire to speak with these things, but they wished them to hear and obey what was said to them. The Entwives ordered them to grow according to their wishes, and bear leaf and fruit to their liking. For the Entwives desired order and plenty and peace, by which they meant that the things should remain where they had set them. So the Entwives made gardens to live in, but we Ents went on wandering, and we only came to the gardens now and again. Then when the darkness came in the north, the Entwives crossed the great river, and made new gardens and tilled new fields, and we saw them more seldom. After the darkness was overthrown, the land of the Entwives blossomed richly, and their fields were full of corn. Many men learned the crafts of the Entwives and honored them greatly, but we were only a legend to them, a secret in the heart of the forest. Yet here we still are, while all the gardens of the Entwives are wasted. Men call them the brown lands now. I remember it was long ago, in the time of the war between Sauron and the men of the sea. Desire came over me to see Fimbrethil again. Very fair she was still in my eyes when I had last seen her, though little like the Ent maiden of old, for the Entwives were bent and browned by their labor, their hair parched by the sun and the hue of ripe corn, and their cheeks like red apples. Yet their eyes were still the eyes of our own people. We crossed over Anduin and came to their land, but we found a desert. It was all burned and uprooted, for war had passed over it, but the Entwives were not here. Long we called and long we searched, and we asked all folk that we met which way the Entwives had gone. Some said they had never seen them, and some said that they had seen them walking away west, and some said east and others south, but nowhere that we went could we find them. Our sorrow was very great, yet the wild wood called, and we returned to it. For many years we used to go out every now and again and look for the Entwives, walking far and wide and calling them by their beautiful names, but as time passed we went more seldom and wandered less far, and now the Entwives are only a memory for us, and our beards are long and gray. The elves made many songs concerning the search of the Ents, and some of the songs passed into the tongues of men, but we made no songs about it, being content to chant their beautiful names when we thought of the Entwives. We believe that we may meet again in time to come, and perhaps we shall find somewhere a land where we can live together and both be content, but it is foreboded that will only be when we have both lost all that we now have. And it may be well that the time is drawing near at last, for Sauron of old destroyed the gardens, the enemy today seems likely to wither all the woods. There is an elvish song, but we did just read that entire story, so unfortunately you will have to sing the elvish song to yourself. So we go to sleep, right? Carrying on with the story, we go to sleep, we wake up, and Treebeard is like, "Ho ho, good morning, Merry and Pippin. You sleep long. I have been many 100 strides already today. Now we will have a drink and go to Entmoot." So he pours them 2 new bowls. It's different than what they ate last night. It's more sustaining, they note. And then they're like, where is Entmoot? And he's like, "Oh, Entmoot is not a place. Entmoot is a gathering of Ents. We shall meet in a place where we have always met. Durdingle, men call it." Heart-wrenching story. I just like the Entwives and the Ents went their own ways. I love the lore of Entwives creating corn and cherries and harvesting those things, and then it's like, and then it's like, well, and those things no longer exist. It's like, but I mean, they do, just to the men. Almost thought that I was talking to young entlings. Does he say that? Did I miss that? Sorry, I feel. Oh, yep, right there. Lie down to sleep. Why, of course you do. I was forgetting singing that song put me in mind of old times. Almost thought that I was talking to young entings. I did. Well, you can lie in the bed. I'm going to stand in the rain. Good night. Yes, because he asks. Because Treebeard goes, but now I'm going to stand up and take a little sleep. Where will you stand? And they go, well, we usually lie down to sleep. We shall be all right where we are. Yes. Yes. So we go to this Entmoot. And several Ents are there to have this meeting about what to do about Saruman and Isengard. I love this description of what Merry and Pip see. They had expected to see a number of creatures, as much like Treebeard, as one hobbit is like another, at any rate to a stranger's eye, and they were very much surprised to see nothing of the kind. The Ents were as different from one another as trees from trees, some as different as one tree is from another, of the same name but quite different growth and history, and some as different as one tree kind from another as birch from beech, oak from fir. There was a few older Ents, bearded and gnarled like hale but ancient trees, though none looked as ancient as Treebeard. And there were tall, strong Ents, clean-limbed and smooth-skinned, like forest trees in their prime. But there were no young Ents, no saplings. Altogether there were about 24 standing on the wide, grassy floor of the dingle, and as many more were marching in. Okay, so the Ents continue to talk. There's a funny moment that I liked where Pippin is listening to them, right? Because this entire story, Merry is of course there, but the POV is mostly from Pip's point of view, right? He finds himself wondering, since Entish was such an unhasty language, whether they had yet got further than good morning. And all of a sudden Treebeard is very aware of him, and he's like, hey, you know what? Why don't you get down? We have gotten past the beginning parts, but it will take us a bit to figure out what we're gonna do. It will take me a bit to tell them the story of why we need to go to Isengard. I will come and see you again and tell you how things are going. So he sends them away, and we have this moment where Pip and Merry are discussing the Ents, right, in their time. I have an odd feeling about these Ents. Somehow I don't think they are quite as safe and, well, funny as they seem. They seem slow, queer, and patient, almost sad. And yet I believe they could be roused. If they hadn't, I would rather not be on the other side. Yes, said Pippin, I know what you mean. There might be all the differences between an old cow sitting and thoughtfully chewing and a bull charging, and the change might come suddenly. And I think that is so beautifully said. So I had said that at the beginning too. I think that's probably one of my favorite lines. Treebeard comes back. He's like, okay, I need to tell this story again. I've told it once. Here's my friend Briggelad is his elvish name. He says he's already made up his mind and he does not need to remain at the moot. He is the nearest thing among us to a hasty Ent. You ought to get on together. Goodbye. So Treebeard leaves him with Briggelad, and Briggelad stood there for some time, surveying the hobbits solemnly, and they looked at him, wondering when he would show any sign of hastiness. In the book, Treebeard has always decided war. In the movie, not at all until Pippin has a redeeming moment. Yeah. Okay, I thought I was misremembering that, Eric. I was like, maybe he's fine going to Isengard, but then he's not fine going to the final battle, which I do think to be true in the movie, but yeah, I was like, my memory was, I was feeling like something was different there, so thank you for pointing that out. They hang out with Briglad, and they learn that he had lost his own home to orcs. So they're like, oh, his hastiness makes sense because the orcs had come with axes and cut down trees, and all of he loved these like specific type of tree. What's it called? I think they're rose trees, maybe. Something rose. Rowan trees. And so he lost all of his friends, and he has this beautiful song of like all of their names, and that's what the hobbits fall asleep to that night. And a second night comes, and the Ents still have not finished their discussions. The third day comes, and suddenly everything's silent, and then we see that Treebeard and all of the Ents are coming. And not only are they coming, we're going to Isengard. Rowan trees, thank you. It's Halloween Eve. If I see a hasty tree man, I'm running. Same. We come with roll of drum, tarunda runda runda rum. The Ents were coming ever nearer, and louder rose their song. We come with horn and drum, tarana rana rana rum. Briglad picked up the hobbits and strode from his house. To Isengard, the Ents cried in many voices. To Isengard, though Isengard be ringed and barred with doors of stone. Though Isengard be strong and hard, as cold as stone and bare as bone. We go to war, to hew the stone and break the door. For bowl and bough are burning now, the furnaces war, we go to war. The land of gloom with tramp of doom, with roll of drum, we come. To Isengard with doom we come, with doom we come, with doom we come. You imagine a group of large-ass trees coming at you, singing that song? With doom we come? No, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. So Treebeard talks to us a little bit, and he's like, yeah, so indeed I have not seen them roused like this for many an age. We Ents do not like being roused, and we never are roused unless it is clear to us that our trees and our lives are in great danger. That has not happened in this forest since the wars of Sauron and the men of the sea. It is the orc work, the wanton hewing, without even the bad excuse of feeding the fires, that has so angered us, and the treachery of our neighbor, who should have helped us. Wizards ought to know better. They do know better. There is no curse in Elvish, Entish, or the tongues of men bad enough for such treachery. Down with Saruman. Will you really break down the doors of Isengard? Asked Mary. Well, we could, you know. You do not know. Perhaps how strong we are. Maybe you have heard of trolls. They are mighty strong, but trolls are only counterfeits made by the enemy in the great darkness and mockery of the Ents, as orcs were of elves. We are stronger than trolls. We are made of the bones of the earth. We can split stone like the roots of trees, only quicker, far quicker, if our minds are roused. If we are not hewn down or destroyed by fire or blast or sorcery, we could split Isengard into splinters and crack its walls into rubble. 3 days of the Entmoot. Originally there, the Entmoot only lasted 2 days. However, because of various other things that are occurring, things ended up 1 day too early. Ooh, timing-wise, they had to get there. Oh, that's interesting, Andrew. Tolkien had to account for an extra day, didn't he? So the paragraph describing the second day was added, and now the Entmoot lasts 3 days. That song is a total marching song, absolutely. Treebeard marched on, singing with the others for a while, but after a time his voice died to a murmur and fell silent again. Pippin could see that his old brow was wrinkled and knotted. At last he looked up, and Pippin could see a sad look in his eyes. Sad, but not unhappy. There was a light in them, as if the green flame had sunk deeper into the dark wells of his thoughts. Of course it is likely enough, my friends. Likely enough that we are going to our doom. But if we stayed at home and did nothing, doom would find us anyway, sooner or later. That thought has long been growing in our hearts, and that is why we are marching now. It was not a hasty resolve. Now, at least, the last march of the Ents may be worth a song. Aye, he said, we may help the other peoples before we pass away. Still, I should have liked to see the songs come true about the Entwives. I should dearly have liked to see Fimbrethel again. But there, my friends, songs like trees bear fruit, only in their own time, in their own way. Sometimes they are withered untimely. Tolkien was meticulous about time. Yeah, we see that a lot in his use of the moon. Really interesting to know the troll and counterfeit idea. Yeah, right? I loved learning the lore of the elves awakening or rousing the trees or whatever verbiage was used there. That was really fascinating to me. And then to learn like the creation of orcs and the creation of like an enemy to match something that is like more or less good. Naturally good. The Ents are naturally good, so to say. And trolls are naturally evil. So in this story at least. Or yeah. Trolls and orcs. Is there anyone here who doesn't love the Ents? I can't imagine. And here's how we end. Pippin looked behind. The number of the Ents had grown, or what was happening. Where the dim, bare slopes that they had crossed should lie, he thought he saw groves of trees, but they were moving. Could it be that the trees of Fangorn were awake, and the forest was rising, marching over the hills to war? He rubbed his eyes, wondering if sleep and shadow had deceived him. But the great gray shapes moved steadily onward. There was a noise like wind in many branches. The Ents were drawing near the crest of the ridge now, and all song had ceased. Night fell, and there was silence. Nothing was to be heard save a faint quiver of the earth beneath the feet of the Ents, and a rustle, the shade of a whisper, as of many drifting leaves. At last they stood upon the summit and looked down in the dark pit, the great cleft at the end of the mountains, Nan Corinner, the valley of Saruman. Night lies over Isengard, said Treebeard. We're coming with a doom. We come with a doom. The dark powers cannot create, just corrupt. But they can create. They created the orcs. They created trolls. They can create. They can do both, I think. The theme of Middle-earth began being corrupted again. Yeah. Tolkien was too hasty. Yes, the theme of Middle-earth being corrupted again, unlike the description of like there are certain trees that are still not dead, but they're no longer Ents. The orcs were elves. Oh, camera? There it is. Although no details about how that worked. When Sauron was just a servant. Oh, okay. Did you want to go back to the behind the scenes of Treebeard in the story? I do, yes. Yes, thank you. Okay, so Andrew left us some good behind the scenes of Treebeard. Orcs were converted from elves, not created from scratch. There you have it. Thank you, Martin. Thank you all. Thank you. Eric's reference is from the there's the my Silmarillion people. There it is. Thank you. Thank you for dropping in that lore, guys, and filling in those blanks. So they can only corrupt. Okay, I take back what I originally said. The movie said the same thing, and I believe that. We need to have a watch party to rewatch them. Okay. No, thank you. Thank you all. I only know what I know, you know? You guys know far more than me. Okay, so the behind the scenes on Treebeard. Andrew left this in the community section this morning. Thank you, or this afternoon. As you will recall, we had the mention of treemen in the pub talk at the Green Dragon. There's actually an older reference to treemen in Tolkien's notes for the Book of Lost Tales, so Tolkien had thought of the idea before. The very earliest mention of Treebeard in the drafts was when Gandalf was talking to Bingo Frodo at Rivendell, explaining why he was delayed in returning to Hobbiton. I was caught in Fangorn and spent many weary days as a prisoner of the giant Treebeard. No, this is before Saruman and Isengard was thought about, and the plot needs a reason for Gandalf's delay. Oh, okay. This isn't our Treebeard, of course. No. So they changed that. Interesting that Tolkien would have created Treebeard originally as like the enemy. A watch party would be great, wouldn't it? Sometime in November we should do it. Maybe before or after US Thanksgiving. Okay. In later planning, a new idea was that Frodo himself would be caught by the giant Treebeard in the forest. Tolkien even wrote out some dialogue. "Where are you, little beetle?" said the voice. "If you don't let me know where you are, you can't blame me for treading on you." The notes go on to say that Frodo is deceived by the giant, who pretends to be friendly, but is really in league with the enemy. By the way, Ent has the meaning of giant in Anglo-Saxon, so for giant we can read Ent here. But when Tolkien finally gets around to drafting this section, the large chunks of the chapters virtually write themselves as the finished product, and Treebeard is the good character we see in the final book. Knowing that ever, at any point, they thought maybe Treebeard could be the enemy breaks my heart. He's such a good friend. Such a good friend, a good ally. Even though he doesn't always, I don't know what will happen in the book, but like in the movies at the very least, he looks after himself first. But like he said, he's not necessarily on anyone's side because no one's really on his side. So that's beautiful, though. I freaking love the Ents. Okay. I'm reading the end of what Wild posted too. I think the most important things we get from these chapters are deep views into the cultures and people that are orcs and Ents. The first of today's chapter is almost exclusively about orcs and how they function as a society. And you know what? That's very true. And I'm glad we did take the time to go through that, more time than I think I originally would have. But it is important to know how the orcs function. They are fractured, spiteful, and not at all unified. Yep, and that is part of their downfall. The Ents, on the other hand, are not unlike hobbits in their love of peace and well-tilled earth, but they are unified in their understanding of what must be done once the facts are all on the table, which is different than the movie, right? Possibly, yes, you did. You did leave 2 notes. Thank you. Originally, Ents were created against protectors, against anything that could cut down trees. Very rough description. So they could be enemy to anything that can use an axe. Yes, and I think when I was like watching the movie, there's a moment where Gimli has his axe out, and I was like, "Put it away, dude, put it away." I was very tense about it. I was like, "Not around our friends." Ents are very suspicious of axe wielders, rightfully so. I can understand that. Anachronisms. In the Uruk-hai, Pippin wonders to himself, "What good have I been? Just a nuisance, a passenger, a piece of luggage, and now I have been stolen, and I am just a piece of luggage for the orcs. I hope Strider or someone will come and claim us." On the face of it, this raises some questions. How many hobbits in the Shire would know what having luggage would be like? Not just a pack with supplies for a day's walking trip, but luggage. Oh, and what level of society do you need to have the idea of lost luggage which is able to be claimed? Tolkien uses some other phrases that seem a bit odd for Hobbit society. For example, he uses the description of the dragon firework at the beginning. The dragon passed like an express train. He does. I've never thought about that. That is some odd language. There's another variant of this in Tolkien's writing. In The Hobbit, he has a description, like the whistle of an engine coming out of a tunnel. What level of technology do we imagine Middle-earth has? They definitely don't have trains. I personally imagine a circa 18th century pre-industrial society because we see there is a certain level of comfort in the Shire, but no engine-driven technology. It is not an exact date match. They have water mills, but is there more technology? Sam's nightmare vision of the Shire with a red brick building with a chimney suggests he was aware that other things could exist. Of course, unlike our 18th century, Middle-earth doesn't have flintlock muskets and cannons, so they're not going to have trains. But how can we have an express train simile in the book? I think we can resolve these by using Tolkien's note in Appendix F. According to Tolkien, our copy of the Lord of the Rings text has been translated from the original words in the Red Book into words that we would understand. The words luggage and express train would not have been written by the Red Book authors. Oh. By the way, another story plot. If Merry and Pip wouldn't be part of the Fellowship, the Ents would have never attacked Isengard. But it is an original text. It's Tolkien's translation. Duh. Oh, are there other anachronisms? I'm hoping I see Eric get back with me. Make sure we're delayed for the rest of this because we're almost done. Okay, one famous thing the film writers mentioned in the film are tomatoes. Tomatoes were introduced to Europe from the Americans in the 1500s. Would Middle-earth have them? But then again, potatoes also came from the Americas, and Tolkien used them in his book. That's probably okay. Yeah, I feel okay with the fruits and the vegetables because it's Middle-earth. A text re-edited over the years. Yeah, no, Pedro, you're exactly right. So unreliable. Yes, it's translated. So, those luggage and express train would not have been used by the Red Book authors. However, in the translation, they make sense. The film anachronism that seems the most glaring is a scene based on this very chapter. Well, looks like meat's back on the menu, boys. When was the last time a Uruk-hai went into a restaurant and ordered from a menu? Fair. Tolkien saw this all as historic. Never wrote a novel. He wrote history. Yeah. Yeah, I love your story plot of pointing out that if Merry and Pip hadn't been part of the Fellowship, the Ents would have never attacked Isengard. Everything has its reason, right? What if the Númenóreans brought tomatoes, potatoes, tobacco from the West? They very well could have. They very well could have. They very well did, probably. It's like, it sounds natural to me. Natural to me. Okay, let me drop in. Uruk-hai ordered from a menu in a Hobbit restaurant where they serve Hobbit. Duh. Okay, there's the link for next week's book club. Again, we're doing 2 chapters for 2 Towers. So we're doing chapter 5 and chapter 6. Those chapters are as follows: The White Rider and The King of the Golden Hall. Let me see how many pages we have. $49. Okay. That's a little less than this this week's, I think we had like 50 something. That's not too bad. About 49 pages in my book. 2 chapters, The White Rider and The King of the Golden Hall. For example, the first choice for the fellowship would be glorified. If he would be part of it, it would have failed. Yeah. Can I tell you, I was having a discussion about Lord of the Rings with a friend, and he was like, you know, some of my friends always bring up that the bird that saved Gandalf, why couldn't the bird just bring the ring to Mordor? And I was like, well, let me tell you, because that bird said he could not do everything. He could just bring Gandalf to one place. I can't remember the exact words of it, but I was like, let me tell you, there's a reason. And the reason is that bird was busy, actually. Okay. And he's like, oh, I didn't know. And I was like, well, the books. Challenge: write a joke that starts with an orc walks into a restaurant. An orc walks into a restaurant and never walks out. I don't know. I don't know. I dislike the orcs so deeply. I can't write a joke about orcs. I can only wish to murder them. Okay, that link that I just dropped in chat, that's next week's stream, so you can go there right now and then you can hit notify me. You don't have to answer today and anyone can play. Okay, I'm gonna put that in our community section, and then I'll put that in the Discord in the book club section. Let me make sure I say thank you. Okay. The pitfalls of not being a part of Lord of the Rings book club, not being able to write the joke. I want to see your best jokes next stream. Where is book club? There it is. Okay. You can drop them right in the community section or into the Discord. If you guys aren't in the Discord, let me grab you that link real quick. There you go. Your friend not knowing the bird. Oh, the pitfalls of not being in the Lord of the Rings book club is my friend not knowing the bird answer. I know. But I felt really cool. I felt really cool knowing that. I wish I could have obviously quoted it correctly, but I didn't know the direct quote off the top of my head. But I was like, wait, there's an answer for that. Don't worry. Don't worry. That bird was busy. All right, y'all. I'll see you next Monday. Again, let me also drop this for you. If you're not following on Twitch, I'm doing a 12-hour stream tomorrow. Horror games. We're going to play Fears to Fathom chapters 3 and 4 and Slay the Princess, which I've heard is a phenomenal scary game. And going to do a tier list of our favorite horror movie, fictional horror daddies. And I think there's like one other thing. Oh yeah, we're going to play the game Don't Scream. So we'll be there from about 11 a.m. Central to 11 p.m. Central. That's noon to midnight Eastern. That's 9 to 9 Pacific. So I hope to see you over there if that's your cup of tea. But if not, I'll see you next week for more journeying through Middle Earth and chapters 5 and 6. Thank you guys. Have a good Monday.